weeks and 2 months to retire. My guess is a lot of people, if they could leave sooner, they would. And so there's decisions that need to be made with regard to Social Security, age 62, 65, or 67, or 70. What do you do about health insurance? What do you do about the life insurance that you leave as your employer says so long, and you've got some group life insurance, but you still might have a mortgage on your home? So the first step that I would like to take this evening is just to talk about how we plan for retirement income. And there's one objective and one goal, and that is to make sure that your goals are achieved. And so the goal that you might have is to have a particular amount of income coming in, regardless whether you get up and go to work or not. And think about how that would feel.
I'm sorry.
Your goal is to retire at, say, age 60. And you're 57 years old now, and a husband and a wife both make $50,000 a year. And you've determined in your mind and in your heart of hearts that you want to retire at age 60. But of course, most people need, not everybody, but most people need maybe about 60% of their income to retire. In this particular case, this person might need a little bit less, and so we've deemed that they've needed about $48,000 a year in net spendable money to live the kind of lifestyle that they want to live in retirement at age 60. So the age is here. The goal is to have $48,000 coming in no matter what happens in the marketplace, the economy, or the world. Now think about that for a second. You're 57, you're age 60. If inflation is growing at 2.2% per year, that means the lifestyle is going to change by 2.2% per year. If that 48,000 isn't going to 49.1, 50,002, 51,003, and growing at 2.2% per year, then after 20 years, you're actually going to live half the lifestyle that you're currently living. So at age 80, you're going to have technically half the money that you have at age 60 to live on. So what we need to do is adjust that for inflation, okay? If there's any argument with that, let me know. Historically, the inflation rate has been about 4%. Over the last 5 years, it's come down to about 3.7. Right now, we're projecting and estimating anywhere from 2.2 to 2.8 going forward. So let's assume for a moment that our retirement living expense is $48,000. This is a broad estimate, but even before you retire, there still might be health insurance that needs to be paid for. And even after you retire, there's Medicare premiums or Medicare supplement premiums, possibly Medicare Advantage premiums, Medicare Part D, which is your drug supplement plan premiums, and deductibles. And when you add all that up, it could get quite expensive even in retirement. So Cindy's going to address that when she talks to you in about 30 minutes. But we're focused more on the 48,000, and as a sideline, we just want to remember that healthcare is always out there looming in the shadows. The decisions that we make today, and let's just say we assume I'm going to retire in the next 8 months. It might be a good idea to take some counsel on that, because if you haven't noticed, we had an administration change, and healthcare is completely up in the air right now. No decisions have been made. We have an idea of what we think is going to happen, and Brandon might fill you in a little bit on that, but quite frankly, we don't know. So we'll just take that one step at a time. But one of the things we do know is that we're able to draw Social Security at age 62. So part of our $48,000 can be funded by the age 62 Social Security. But if you may also be aware that, let's assume your full retirement age is age 66 and say 6 months. For every year that you take Social Security early, you're going to lose 5% of that amount. So if your age 66 amount is $1,500 and you decide to take it at age 62, you're going to lose 30% of that benefit. So instead of getting $1,500, you might only get $1,200. So you'll have to figure out what's best for me. Well, statistically speaking, and it's always a gamble, we look at the health situation of everybody. Statistically speaking, if you live to be 90 and you chose to take your retirement dollars at age 70, which is the longest amount that you can wait, you'll actually get $500,000 more if you were to wait till age 70. But who can wait till 70? The reason you might want to wait till 70 is if you have other streams of income coming in, then you get a benefit. When you wait from age 60 to 70, whereas before, if you take it early, you get take a 5% haircut, you actually get an 8% increase in benefit for every year that you wait from 66 to 70. So if you can think, where in the world are you going to go get an 8% return on your money? Now, guess what the key operative is there? You got to live to get it. And so that's why we want to evaluate healthcare status, how long your family has lived. And what I do is I used to use a professional company to estimate how long people are going to live. And I would pay $49 for a husband and a wife to try to get an idea how long they were going to live. An insurance agent turned me onto a website called Living to 100. And it has about 40 questions. And what they've determined is that website is probably within 1 or 2% of all of the expensive research that you can do. So we use that just to kind of see what's the history of the family, what do I currently have going on right now. But I can tell you, medical science is pretty incredible. And a lot of things are taking place today that we didn't have available to us, even 10 years ago, much less 20 or 30 years ago. They're keeping people alive a lot longer. Statistically speaking, if a husband and wife both live to be 65, one of the two of them will live to be 90. That's a statistic. Now, how valid it is, we'll have to wait and see. Because you know what's a great predictor of how long you're going to live? How long you've already lived up until this point. So as you can see, best case scenario is you wait till you're 70. Worst case scenario is if both of you take it at 62, then it's somewhere around $500,000 less than that amount. Most people take kind of a hybrid strategy, where the husband might wait to age 66, the wife might take hers at 62, of course assuming that men, 3 out of 4 of us are going to die before the women, and they're going to inherit our benefit anyway, so to speak. So we want to look at who has the highest benefit, who has the longest life expectancy, and then make a reasonable decision from there. Now, if each person, and I kind of used a lot of parity here, I know that many times the women have to take time off to raise children, and they may take 15 years out of the workplace or not work at all. But in this day and age of plurality and equality, I have to make it all even, Steven, and fair. So it may not look right to you guys, but trust me, I didn't want to do it any other way and run the risk of taking on all of the heat. But anyway, I've used 2 401ks, a husband's and a wife's, and I just happen to name them both the same, so I made a mistake there. But let's just assume both of them have $250,000 in their 401k. And they're both contributing annual additions of about $5,000 a year. And they are willing to make extra savings, but let's take a look at some other ways that people do have assets in retirement. These are things you may not have considered. Some companies are still offering pensions. The public school system, public employment still offers pensions. You may have a trust that's named you as the beneficiary, and you may have a stream of income coming in. Rental property, land rental, if you're a farmer, maybe you're not farming the land, but you're renting it out to somebody else. Maybe a business interest where you're a 1/3 owner. Or let's just say in some cases, you've got an inheritance that you know is not going to come today, but at some point our moms and dads are going to pass away. Let's just put it out there 30 years from now. But even if we were to inherit, say, a couple $100,000 30 years from now, we would want to include that in the financial plan so that we can see how it's going to go into our total accumulation of income. We met with a guy last night, just visiting their home, and he had one antique that was worth $56,000. So sometimes people are counting on those types of assets to be part of their retirement plan. Life insurance face amount, where you're going to leave an amount of money to your wife or your children, and then of course an insurance cash amount. There's lots of different other streams of income that we can include in retirement if they're viable. And then with regard to investments, some people have very low tolerance for risk. And they might say, well, I've got some money in a 401k, but I'm a risk adverse person. Great. Just look at the fixed options at 3.2% and move on with your life and not have to worry about having money invested at all anywhere again. Or you can say, well, I don't think 3.2 is where my money should be, because then maybe I'm only the 5 talent man and I want to be the 10 talent man who doubles his master's money. In which case, if you said, well, I have a little bit more tolerance for risk, what we would do is to do an investment policy statement. Just find out how important it is preserving the amount of money you have today. If it's 100% important, and that's the most important thing to you, then 3.2% interest might seem like a good rate of return. But if growth is important to you, then you might want to look at some other options. Keeping volatility low swings you back to capital preservation. But if you want to keep pace with the rising cost of prices, then you might want to slip out on the growth side a little bit more. Current cash flow, how important is having money available today versus money in the future? And then how much risk are you willing to take to achieve a higher return? Let's just assume that these two individuals decided that they want to be in a 60-40 stock to bond portfolio. Well, a 60-40 stock to bond portfolio is going to give the probability of success for these people to have $48,000 of net spendable money coming in from age 60 to age 92, regardless of whether they get up and go to work or not. They have a 61% chance of having that happen. If they just tweak their investment performance just a little bit, they can raise that to 64%. And what that would be required is currently they have a 60% stock, 40% fixed income. The average total return is about 5.56. They would get about 5.78, and they'd pick up 2 or 3 percentage points, but really not enough to make difference, right? I mean, they're still pretty low. They only have a 6 out of 10 chance of achieving their goals. So what is it that we would want to do in this case? Now that, just to explain this, the probability of success right now is 2% and 7%. That means based on different rates of return, this portfolio is going to give a 7% chance of probability that we won't run out of money. This 64% means of the 32 years in retirement from age 60 to 92, we're only going to fund it 64%. So how can we increase that? Well, the one thing we can do is we look at our assumptions. I'm going to retire at 60. I need $48,000 a year coming in of net spendable money. And these are the amounts that I'm saving right now. But let's just assume that we change 3 variables. And we said, okay, instead of retiring at age 60, I can extend that to age 63. And instead of needing $48,000 worth of net spendable money, we could probably live on $42,000. And maybe my spouse can start saving $5,000 more in the 401k. If they were to make those changes over the next 6 years, that 7% goes to 100% probability of having enough money, and a 69%, and really in the comfort, almost in the comfort zone here, of having enough money no matter what market returns there are. Because sometimes you can have bad returns in the first 3 years that you retire. Let's assume that you retired in 2000, and we have a -8, a -7, and a -9, 3 flat years or down years in the stock market. It can take its toll. But the higher that probability and confidence number is, the more confident that you're going to feel going into retirement. The reason I wanted to share all of this, and I'm going to turn things over to Brandon, is because in addition to making investments, we don't make investments to lose people money. That would be crazy. We don't get paid anymore to take on any more risk. But one thing we do know, and the fact is we don't get paid anymore to handle a 401k than what you're already paying in 401k fees anyway, or with other brokerage firms. But what we think is more important than just the management of money and monitoring the amount of risk that you're willing to take to achieve a higher return, we think what's more important is the risk that you're taking not knowing if you've got enough money to last from age 60 to age 92. Okay, so I wanted to share that information about how we create comprehensive written financial plans so that no matter what happens in America, in China, or in Great Britain, you still have the highest probability of achieving your goals for the reasons that are important to you. I'm going to turn things over to Brandon.